You know what the talk is about, but let me sort of drill down into this a little bit. When I talk about shift left or DevSecOps or developer-centric security, I don't have the DevSecOps definition that's sort of gotten poisoned by mostly vendors who have basically thought of it as slapping DevOps lipstick on a traditional security mindset. So that's not what I mean. What I mean is this instead. It's these three things. It's empowering engineering teams to take ownership of the security of the products that they're building. That's number one. Number two, it's using not the tools of DevOps only. You know, you have to have a CI system, right? In order to be doing DevOps. It's actually adopting the principles that really make DevOps effective, and that's sort of characterize it in the three ways of DevOps in the Phoenix project. Flow, feedback, and a culture of experimentation and learning. Flow has been sort of renamed systems thinking, I think, now. And the culture of experimentation and learning, the wording's been tweaked on that as well a little bit. But never forgetting that the bottom line here is you gotta ship product. You have to deliver value to customers. And so that's gonna actually trump some things. That's gonna actually win the trade-off analysis of do I take a security risk or do I grow my market share 50% faster? And so, you know, that's smart to grow your market share 50% faster maybe. And as a security expert, I usually get, you know, when I say this at a security conference, I usually get, you know, sort of boos and hisses at this point. But for developers, I think you sort of get it. So let me give you a little bit about my background. Some logos are going to pop up there, but there's two things I want you to know about me to understand sort of where I'm coming from. First of all, I was the head of AppSec at Comcast for 5 years. 10,000 development team members across all the divisions, Sky, NBC Universal, DreamWorks. That was fun working with the DreamWorks developers. Lots of properties you don't think of as Comcast. And I basically did this shift left developer-centric migration at Comcast over the course of 5 years, and they shut down the old traditional AppSec program by the time I was done, and that's when I declared victory. The other thing to know about me is I'm a coder. I write code almost every day. I'm the primary author of a dozen or so open source projects, one of which gets 1 million downloads a month. So I'm not just preaching from a security ivory tower. I'm actually practicing what I preach. So that's about me. I'd like to sort of get a feel for who I have in the audience here to sort of steer things a little bit. So first of all, how many of you write code on the daily? Okay, pretty much everybody. Keep your hands up if you also write pipeline tooling, you know, pretty regularly, maybe not on the daily. Okay, so maybe about 10% do that, 20% maybe. Okay, how many of you are actively involved in security? Maybe it's not your primary job, but it's a pretty big part of your thinking in your job. Okay, even better than the pipeline part. Good, so that could be self-selection for this talk, but there's only one track, so maybe not. So there's four questions I'm going to answer, ask and answer, and these essentially sort of set you up for the deal you're going to make with security. First of all, the first question is the development team actually ready to take ownership of the security of the products that they're building? And I contend that the one prerequisite, which actually I think is actually a prerequisite for you to claim you're doing DevOps, is that you have an automated test suite that runs on ephemeral build technology, that essentially allows you to run, you know, one pull request over here, a competing pull request maybe, that a conflicting one at least, over here in a different set of hardware with a different set of data storage so that they don't interfere with each other, and you can run those tests automatic. If you aren't doing that first, you're not ready to take ownership of the security of your products. Now, the tests don't have to be all that involved at this point. A smoke test is probably good enough to meet this qualification. It's that ephemeralness, that move fastness, that I think you need to get to first. The big engineering hindrance for this is typically the data. So if you have a testing platform, staging environment that you load a database with and then you run the tests from, that doesn't scale very well unless you have done the engineering work to load that copy of that database in multiple places and load them fast whenever needed and shut them down, and they disappear and don't consume your resources. Everyone says this is expensive. If you do this in such a way that it's ephemeral, the engineering work is expensive, but the actual running of it this way is not expensive using ephemeral architecture. So that's the engineering work you have to do first, and you have to have at least one end-to-end test in that suite. So one smoke test, and you're shooting for at least 25-30% test coverage before you sort of say, okay, now we're ready to take ownership of the security prize. So another element of this that I think is not necessarily a requirement, but a really strong recommendation in my case, that the test suite runs before the merge decision, and the feedback comes into the merge decision. Often it's run after, in a later environment, further downstream, because test running is expensive. So test running has to be less expensive, has to be faster in order for this to work. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, how you do that and why. Couple of big reasons why I recommend this. First of all, software composition analysis. How many of you were in the field when log4shell attacks hit? 4 years ago now, I guess it is? So it was December, yeah. So was that a mad scramble at your organization to a certain degree? A little bit, maybe. Yeah. The security people answer that. Every hand is up in the room when I give the talk at a security conference. So if you were on an older version of log4j that didn't get patched, you had to manually implement a workaround in order to basically prevent yourself from being attacked by log4shell. You couldn't just upgrade. And that's because they didn't release the patches for the older versions. They still haven't to this day. You have to be on 3, I think, log4j, someone correct me if I get this wrong, the 3 series in order to get the latest patches. And anyone who was on 1 or 2 didn't get the latest versions of the patches. Well, you don't want to spend all day, every day, keeping up with every incremental upgrade of your dependencies, right? Your software is made up of, I don't know, hundreds sometimes dependencies, direct dependencies, maybe a dozen. Indirect could be thousands, right? You're not going to keep up with all of those. So if you could write a bot, someone must have done this. Maybe it's called Dependabot, that would actually try the upgrade and run it through your test suite and tell you whether or not it's going to pass or fail. And if it passes, then you're much more likely to say, okay, let's try it. We'll run more testing on it after that Dependabot one. So teams that don't have an ephemeral test suite don't stay up with the latest dependencies nearly as much as teams that do. And this is a key element to taking ownership of the security products. Otherwise, security's got to sort of like compensate for the fact that you're on log4j 1.x when a new log4shell comes out. The other reason is that, hey, you should probably be doing it anyway, because it's for quality reasons as well, right? And it's nice to sort of have automation testing to confirm it. And I actually consider this the definition of DevOps, the minimal definition of DevOps, is that you have a gauntlet that artifacts have to run through before you consider them worthy of the next higher level environment. It could be just from your desktop to a development branch, could be from the development branch to a staging branch, could be from the staging branch, and they can be different sets of tests at those levels. But you have to have some testing at every level of those branches, or do it all at the lowest branches. Okay, so that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, let's shift the focus away from what developers need to be doing already, and move to sort of what does it look like what is the vision you can paint for security of how it would look if we were to own it? And so what happens at a lot of security groups is they use one of these industry standards, NIST or SANS or OWASP or PCI. How many of you have heard of those security standards? Yeah, almost everyone has heard of all those security. Anyone in a high regulatory environment here? So what industry are you in, sir? Insurance. And what regulations, which one of these standards or even a different one you have to comply with for insurance? You're not the security guy, but you are a Hokie, so I'm going to let you off the hook.
We do have to go through a lot of, I missed the previous organization I worked for, but we had to go through a lot of penetration testing before we demolish.
Okay. What happens is a lot of security groups just say, we have to meet this standard, and it uses terminology that if you give that standard to the developers, they go, I don't understand what that means. So they also don't all say the same thing. So if you say, give me 2, then they might even have conflicting elements to them. They target security specialists with the terminology. They don't adapt to your particular environment. They don't adapt to your context either. And they're overwhelming. The OWASP one, the original OWASP one that was targeted at developers, you would think for OWASP, was 400 pages long. They have a shorter one now. But still, you see this 400-page thing or 100-page thing even, and you're like, where do I start? This is just overwhelming. I don't even want to have anything to do with this. I've got to ship features tomorrow, so I'll wait to that. And it's not prioritized. It's not like it's 400 pages, but in the first 2 pages, here's the things that would get you 90% of the benefit. And they don't even give you that. It's one flat list, and it's not weighted. Okay, so instead of that, what I propose you do is you come up with your own list. Developers and security people together in the same room. So usually the security people pay for me to come in and facilitate this work. One time I actually had the engineering organization pay for me to come in and facilitate this work. The membership, though, that I tell the security leaders that are organizing this is, I want you to have the 3 to 5 most respected engineers in the entire company in the room when we do this 2/3 of a day workshop. If we do it live in person, if we do it over the course of a week, it'll be 3 hour-and-a-half long remote sessions plus a follow-on session the following week. I want you to have the 3 to 5 most respected engineers in the organization in the room. And I don't mean the head of engineering if he isn't writing code. This is usually the team leads of the crown jewel projects. Those are usually the people that really want to move fast, really want to do the right thing, and really want to not have security get in their way. But they've learned a little bit enough about the politics of the organization to know how to balance that well. So you want those 3 people in the room. If they're not in the room, I cancel. If they don't show up, I cancel the event and we reschedule it because it's that critical that they're in the room. Why is that? Twofold. First of all, it'll be much better. The list of practices we come out with at the end will be much better because they're in the role. And 2, when it gets rolled out across the organization, this substitute for PCI or SANS or OWASP, this developer-friendly version of those policies, security policies, when that gets rolled out, the developers are going to say to this respected person, hey, is this just another one of those security things we can ignore? And that person will say, no, I was in the room when we created this one. This one is the one we should have had all along. This is the one you listen to. And they start advocating for it. That's the only way to get the organization to essentially adopt it. Okay, so what do? You get the right people in the room. You collaboratively, individually, everyone comes up with their own top 4 list of practices they think should be on the list. And then you put them up on the board and you organize them. Has anyone done this for agile planning? Post-it note-based agile planning? Yeah, it's a very common practice in development. But to the security people, it's very foreign. They've never seen anything like this before. But that's how we collaboratively come up with this list in the end. Not only do we identify the practices, but we also say, could you easily expect every development team in your organization to do this today? When I was at Comcast, one of the policies that was picked out of the original workshop that I did there was secrets management. Then when we started going to the development teams and saying, hey, you need to not put secrets in source code repositories, they were like, where do we put them? This was a few years ago, so you guys are all like, oh, that's easy, a secrets vault. Well, Comcast hadn't purchased a secrets vault, didn't have a secrets vault. The CI system didn't automatically provide one back then. They all do now. So we had to give them the easy button for doing secrets management before we could expect them to do that. And so we actually filtered the list down from what we wish it were to what we could reasonably expect it to be today. And then we make that be the work of the security group to accomplish over the next year maybe to put that easy button in place for things like secrets management. And then before you roll it out to all the development teams, you roll it out to the development teams of those 3 to 5 engineering leaders that were in the room, and you try it out. And you see what other kind of pushback, and you edit it, and you evolve it another round before you actually roll it out more broadly to the rest of the organization. What is the criteria for a good dev-centric AppSec tool? This is question number 3. So I don't work for an AppSec vendor anymore, so some of this was essentially geared towards justifying the fact that they paid me to travel and speak at conferences and stuff back then. So take this with a grain of salt, but this content is real, I believe it, but it's a little bit stated from the perspective of a security tool vendor. So criteria number 1, we already talked about this, is speed. Anyone recognize this airplane here? Anyone recognize that phrase down there? A few of you guys. The ones with the gray hair like me in the room. So this is Top Gun. I feel the need. Oh, that was good. Yeah, the need for speed. So yeah, so that's what the reference is for. Yeah, so in order to put it pre-pull request merge decision, somebody over here said, oh, that's not going to happen. I saw the body language. I forget who it was, but it was somebody on this side. Was it you? Was it your body language said, yeah, it's not going to happen. I would shoot for 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. That's really hard to do with a SaaS tool like Fortify, for instance. It's never going to finish in 5 minutes. Sneak, on the other hand, will finish in 5 minutes running on even pretty decent sized code bases. If you want the best of both worlds from a SaaS tool, Checkmarx has an incremental mode. Now, you have to be running it frequently for the incremental mode to work, so you have to run it on every pull request, and you have to be doing multiple of these a week at least in order for that to sort of really work, or every update to a pull request, I should say. But yeah, it'll run a baseline scan every night that could take hours, and then it'll just do incremental scans during the day. Or you could use a runtime security tool to get it under this limit. So most SaaS tools take longer than that. Some incremental mode can help you with that, or lighter weight SaaS tools like Sneaks. But runtime tools are doing a better job with this. And so I happen to have worked for a runtime tool vendor, so that's where that line comes from. But I actually do believe that runtime security, IaaS is what it used to be called. Now it's called application detection and response. Actually gives you much more rapid feedback that you can actually gate with. But it has to be very accurate. So false positives for untuned SaaS configurations can be as high as 30 to 80%. And that wastes your time and erodes your trust in the tool. So false negatives are also a problem. And this is Sneak's problem, by the way. So Sneak runs fast because it's only looking for like the OWASP top 10 and nothing else. And that's an exaggeration, that's a simplification. But it's only looking for a very small set of really important things as opposed to the massive list of things that the more mature vendors, well, actually it's a conscious decision on Snyk's part to keep the list small. It's not about maturity for that, in that case, the more legacy vendors. So if you have false negatives, you're going to leave exposed risk. So the highest SAST score in the OWASP benchmark, it's a Java-based benchmark, is just a little over 50%. And so 50% accurate is the best scoring tool. It takes both false positives and false negatives into account. So that's why it's not as high as 70%, matching the first line of that thing. So they miss some real things. On the other hand, Contrast Assess, the company I used to work for, is a runtime security tool, is the only tool that finishes within 30 seconds on the OWASP benchmark, and it has 100% accuracy score. And it's a runtime IaaS-based tool. So if you aren't even looking at ADR tools or runtime security tools, you should at least consider them. Is that a hand raised, a question? No, I'll get to questions later if we have time. Okay. So that's what you should be looking for in tools. Okay, so you got this list of practices now, this 10 to 12 practices you think are great because you did this workshop. You've got these great tools. Now you've got these two things. How do you roll them out to an organization? So how many of you work at organizations with more than, say, 3 development teams? Okay, how many work at organizations with more than 10 development teams? How many work of you at organizations with more than 100 development teams? One guy in the back. Where do you work, sir?
I work in finance.
In finance, for a bank?
A retirement healthcare.
Okay, cool. This works really well at 10 teams or above, what I'm about to say in this next section. It's not really all that necessary at 3 teams or below. Somewhere in the middle is sort of where the trade-off point is. When you get to 100 teams, it's the only way to go. So you know this approach I'm about to describe to you. It starts with this changing the script on what a maturity model is. Instead of a maturity model being, oh, you're at level 1 maturity if you've adopted these 3 practices, and you're at level 2 maturity if you add these 2 additional practices, and you're at level 3, etc. That's not the levels we're going to talk about. We're going to actually give you a separate level rating for each practice. Thoughts, words, actions, culture. Thoughts means you're not doing this yet, and you're just thinking about it. Words means we're talking about making plans to do it. Actions is we've partially implemented it, and culture is we've implemented it in every place where it makes sense. And you do this, adopt this for each practice. Let me skip this slide and go to the next slide because I think it's actually more valuable. So this is an example list of 13 practices. It's an eye chart intentionally. I don't want you to borrow this list. I want you to do the workshop and create your own, but it usually comes out pretty similar to this. The criteria for the list of practices are going to appear on the right here, and this is what I want you to pay attention to. It starts with non-security practices, emphasizing engineering, good engineering. It says things like, do you have an ephemeral build and test environment? Do you have a minimal automated test suite that runs in that environment? Prioritization and gamification. So if you notice here, on the left, you see these numbers, 5%, 15%. That's points that you get. So it's prioritized. It's ordered roughly in the order of dependency. So if you do these things near the top of each section, they're sort of usually become before the things at the bottom. But you could skip some things if it wasn't a prerequisite and get more points possibly. So it's prioritized and gamified. You get no points for things like scanning. That's a big thing that security people get wrong. We're going to roll out the SaaS tool across all 50 projects, and then we'll worry about resolving the findings for that. Nope, you're better off rolling it out to one project and resolving all the critical and highs for that one project before you roll it out to the others. The focus has to be on resolving the findings from the tools, not actually getting the scans run. So we had to shift that with our emphasis. And it's got a shallow on-ramp. So these 4 practices right here, critical clean for third-party code, you import software composition analysis, et cetera. Critical clean for first-party code, you write SAST. That's just critical. And then this is just high. These 4 practices make up a big percentage of the overall 100%. And a lot of folks put that under one bullet in their policy manual. We run SAS and SCA tools. Boom, that's our policy. You know, so this breaks it down so you get credit for the resolution of just the criticals of one category of things. And this doesn't even mention mediums here, which, you know, more mature companies actually get all the way to mediums as well. Okay, so second to last slide here. The company I'm building now is called Transformation Dev. It's got open source tools for doing this ranking, this facilitating these workshops. Right now it's in alpha for sort of like a paid engagement with me. You get access to it, and then you can do it. There is an open source list of the actual practices that I can get you access to, but you could sign up for more information at Transformation Dev if you want. Here is the final slide of content. Here's what the deal is that you make in the end. The Godfather, you know, make you an offer you can't refuse. Developers get delightful tools, and they get a prioritized list of easy button practices that they can adopt. Security gets a commitment from each development team to adopt 1 to 3 of these practices every 90 days. And that's all they get. That's all they get. But that's all you have to sign up for, and you have to really commit to it. So the first step after we do this workshop is I go to the engineering leadership and I say, are you willing to put some teeth behind this? Every team has to adopt 1 to 3 of these practices every quarter. And are you really willing to push it? And if they say no, I basically tell the security people, this is never going to work, and I back out of the engagement. So we have to get that commitment. Had a 93% success rate. If a team committed to adopt something in 90 days, they adopted it within 90 days, 93% of the time with this. I started out at 43% with that same statistic, and I had to make some changes to the way we did it in order to get it up to 93. So there's some tricks associated with actually making that work. So thank you.